ringing right now, former ring announcer. Hopefully I'm doing this intro good enough. We're not the professionals in ring announcing like he is. This man, you heard his voice on all the classic NWA, WCW events, televised and non-televised. He commentated for the AWA as well, and the WWE, which was WWF back then, and the WWF. None other than the man himself, the world's most dangerous ring announcer, Gary Michael Cappetta. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
We're doing well. Doing well. Thank you for coming on to our show tonight.
Not a problem. It's my pleasure. Hopefully,
was our intro for you, was it good enough for you, since you are the master ring announcer and intro guy? Was that good enough for you?
It was terrific. It just seems to me that somebody who did what you said that I did, that I should be dead.
Well, we're glad.
Is it possible that I'm still alive?
Well, we are glad you're still here with your illustrious career of working for all those companies. Anybody that's listening live or listening to archive, please do your homework. I know we said a lot of acronyms, a lot of W's, and a lot of C's in the companies that you worked for. But thank you for coming on to the show tonight.
I think maybe it just means I can't hold a job.
Look
at Howard Finkel. Howard Finkel, he started with the WWF, and he's still with them. And Gary Michael Cappetta, I guess he just couldn't hold a job.
Oh man. Well, since you brought him up, and that was a question fans were sending us earlier today, is your thoughts of the Fink, of Howard Finkel. A lot of people regard him as the greatest ring announcer of all time. But since you are one of the greats, we want to know your thoughts on him.
Howard's a good guy. I saw Howard about a year and a half ago at a convention. He had come over. We really didn't, ring announcers usually don't know each other because there's only one ring announcer at an event. So the opportunity to cross paths, doesn't happen that often. But I knew him back from the 70s. He had started a year after I started. And here and there I would see him. And, he's a friend.
Thank you for that. Now, you said there's normally only one ring announcer per event. Now, what happened if you would get sick or something happened to you? What would be the next man up, or what would be the substitute for you?
I don't know, because to tell you the truth, I never missed an event that I was scheduled at. There was never a time. There was one time where I was supposed to be in Florida, and I was working with WCW, and I was doing studio work for them, and we just needed to get it done, and so they called ahead, and they just said I wasn't coming, but it wasn't like I didn't make the date. It was, that I was still working for the company, but back in the studio. But other than that, I never missed a date in all those years. But thank God, there were snowstorms and all kinds of weather problems. But I would just, if I was driving, I would just take my time and drive through the storm. Or if I was flying, you just do your best to get an alternate flight, and I always found myself at the event. So I never had a problem that way.
So, Gary, that you are committed and loyal, that you rarely ever missed a day. You worked for all these companies back in the day. You never missed a day at your job.
Nope, never did. Never missed one.
Well,
in fact, going to Baltimore once when I was working with the NWA, this I couldn't figure out. I forget what the circumstances were, but I was late getting there, Maybe it was like an 8 o'clock show. I got there at 8:15. It's probably traffic. It was probably a huge traffic jam on 95, and they held up the show. I couldn't believe it. I walked in, and at the time you would walk across the stage, and that was visible to the fans, and they all just stared at me as I walked across the stage. And I thought, oh my God, like they didn't start the show yet. This was amazing. So I didn't understand that, to tell you the truth, but yeah, I always managed to make the show. I was just fortunate, and yeah, I was determined to get to where I was booked.
Now, with coming to the shows, a lot of times, past guests has mentioned this, where he had to be at the event early, 9 a.m., 12 p.m. With you being a ring announcer, were you obligated to be at the shows earlier with the boys, or were you allowed a little leeway to get there a little late?
Well, when I worked with WCW, I carried the music, and so I had to get there earlier than everyone else because I had to get together with the personnel at the arenas who were actually going to physically play the music, and I had to set it up for them. Many times they had no idea about anything about wrestling, so I would just set it up to tell them, okay, match 1, play this music first entrance, play this music second entrance, and from the center of the ring, with a little like a little finger kind of gesture to them, that told them when to start and when to stop the music. So I was controlling everything from center ring. I had to arrive early, though, to set them up, because they wouldn't have known. And I just told them, just keep your ears open to who's who, because at the end of the match, you have to play the music of the winner. So you have to know which music to play. So
well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Because we never carried an extra person to actually play the music or to sit with some buildings are union buildings, and we wouldn't have been able to play the music ourselves anyway. But you could have had somebody sitting there with them, to tell them what to do and when. But we never carried an extra person to do that. So it was all me getting there early, setting it up with them, doing all of the direction as to when to start the music, when to stop the music from the center of the ring.
So you did a lot more. So GMC, which is a nickname that a lot of boys do call you, I've been told, GMC, you did a lot more. So you was more than just a ring announcer. You controlled as far as the music. You gave them the direction of how to play it. So you wore, could have say, many hats.
Yeah, there were different times I did different things. There was a time when I did the Spanish edition, the commentary for our Los Angeles affiliate, which was KCAL. There were times when I produced do you remember when they would interview the wrestlers, and the wrestlers say, I will be in Baltimore on Saturday and I will do whatever?
Yes.
There was a time when I was producing those segments, and I also did the event center for a short while. So, but that was crazy because they wanted me to do it in my ring announce voice, and you can't sit there for 7 hours and boom like that with a ring announce voice. It just wasn't practical. So by the end of the day, I had no voice left. But anyway, that's what they wanted. That's what I tried to give them. And, yeah, a lot of people don't remember that. In fact, I don't have any of those on video. I would love to have at least one of those just to see it again. So I'll send out a shout-out at people to send it to my Facebook page if anyone has a copy of me doing the event center.
Okay, we definitely can check around for you. I'm sure a lot of our live fans and listeners always get at sending links on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, even to your Facebook. So I'm pretty sure some of our fans will send information to you or correspondence to try to send it. So, of course, with voice, with us knowing interviewing a lot of singers and musicians, with your voice being what made your money, your voice being what made you known. Talk about your diet. A lot of people may not think of what you eat and what you drink is very important for your voice, like if you were a singer. Were there any type of regimen that you went through, a special kind of diet, or did you drink any tea or water before or even during the show to keep your voice strong?
Nope, nothing, zero. Nope, I smoke like a chimney. If I stopped smoking, I probably would lose my ring announce voice.
Oh.
No, I don't mean to be a smart ass, but I didn't do anything. If you're losing your voice, honey and lemon, but I never had a problem with that. I never did anything special. It was just there when I needed it.
So for you, smoking helped your voice and helped you out, and this isn't the first time we've heard this in interviews we've done in other interviews. Smoking actually helped you out.
I was just being a wise guy. I have smoked, and I do smoke, but I was just being a wise guy when I said that. I never did anything. It was just there.
Said the natural gift of the voice. I will say that us growing up, and with us locally, being here, of course, us being stationed here in Baltimore, being more of an NWA, WCW town as opposed to WWF back in, the 80s, definitely in the mid to late 80s and early 90s. When we were thinking WCW, NWA, your voice was very synonymous of the product. You couldn't think of NWA or WCW without hearing your voice, without thinking of Flair or Sting or the Road Warriors or the Horsemen or, Luger, all the names that goes with it, Tony Schiavone and Davy Crockett doing the commentary. So I'd like to say in the lore of the NWA and WCW for us, especially in this area, Atlanta, Baltimore, the eastern area, your voice is iconic. That's all we heard and that's all we knew. We may not knew your name, as kids, we hear your voice. Oh, that's the guy in the ring. That definitely meant a lot.
Yeah, Baltimore was always one of our strongest cities, and it was one of the few cities in the Northeast where, in the 80s, and the time that I worked for the Crockett's, the late 80s, that we outdrew the WWF. And the Baltimore Arena was one of the few venues that allowed us in. McMahon had Madison Square Garden, Boston Garden, Philadelphia Spectrum, Pittsburgh Civic Arena. He had all of the major arenas in the Northeast locked up. They would never rent to the NWA. But Baltimore was a little different. Baltimore, we just did really good business. And at one point, McMahon told the management of the Baltimore Arena, if you let the NWA in, we're not coming back. And to the credit of the Baltimore Arena, they said goodbye. And that's, for years, you didn't see the WWF at the Baltimore Arena. They went to the Cap Center. It was just a huge, it was a much more physical product. When I went from the WWF to the NWA, it was like going from ballet to combat. I had never seen anything like I saw when I went into the NWA, to their programs. Jim Crockett at the time. It was kick-ass. It was great. It was just, there was so much more emotion. I think that's the key, and that's the bottom line to all of it. It wasn't, we're going because it's the cool thing to do. No, it was, we're going to an NWA show because we want to see that guy get his ass kicked. And they delivered, for sure.
And I definitely do agree with that. With that, and you mentioned Baltimore. We'll hit locally, then we'll go to other questions from fans and from us. When you think of the city here, us being one of the most iconic wrestling cities. What first comes to your mind when you think of our city and when you think of the NWA or WCW? Does one particular match or one particular event comes to your mind?
Yes. Two in particular, and then one that's a little bit different. The night that Ron Simmons won the world title in Baltimore when he beat Vader,
Classic.
and everything that went into that program leading up to it that night, where Jake the Snake appeared, he attacked Sting, who was supposed to meet Vader. Then we had to have a lottery drawing to see who was going to face Vader for the title, who was going to get the title shot. That was an exciting night. And then I forget what, I think it was the 1988 Great American Bash. I think that was the one with the Triple Tower of Doom.
Yeah, I think there was.
It was one spectacle after another. I think it was Dusty against Barry Windham, Flair and Luger, which had a disappointing ending, but nevertheless. And that Triple Tower of Doom, I never saw anything like that. That was Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Garvin, and they were fighting for the heart of Precious. It was, and you know what else in Baltimore was the Crockett Cup when Magnum came back after his accident. So those were three wrestling-related things that I remember. After I finished announcing, and I wrote my book, and then I came on tour with my book. So I had an East Coast tour. It was to last 2 weeks. I was to go from Baltimore down to South Beach and then back up, and it was all going to happen in bookstores and in all the states in between. So my first stop was Baltimore. I was set to do the Barnes and Noble at White Marsh, which is a very strange place. That's like a fake little city. Have you ever been to White Marsh? It's weird. It's strange. It's like a movie set.
Another world.
Anyway, so I had 2 interviews scheduled to promote that night's appearance. Early in the morning on a rock and roll show, and in the afternoon on a sports talk show. So at 7 o'clock, I'm promoting my book and my book appearance at the Barnes & Noble in White Marsh at this rock and roll on this rock and roll show, and it went really well. I finished about 9 o'clock. It was too early to check into the hotel, so I thought, well, let me go over to the Barnes & Noble in White Marsh and introduce myself, and because I'll be there later. And I get in and I talk to the manager, and she said, I have no idea that you're going to be here. I said, what do you mean? She said, I don't know. We didn't promote it. We don't have extra books. I said, well, I have books, but I was just on the radio telling people I'll be here tonight at 7. And I have another radio interview scheduled for a little bit later. So anyway, I set them up with books. I went I checked into the hotel. I did the other interview. And when I got to the Barnes & Noble that night, there were like 125 people there. I was astounded. I was amazed because there was no advance promotion for this. It was just on the strength of those 2 interviews. So Baltimore is very close to my heart. Very close. I love Baltimore. And I've been working really hard to try to find a theater that would fit my stage show, which is coming in March. And so far, I have not been successful, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah, please do, and please do update us. We'll talk off air about your success, and if you get successful with that, we'll definitely be there to support. Yeah, support. You work to cover something most people may not know. Before WCW, before the NWA, you worked for the WWF or WWE now. And something the fans sent earlier was a funny YouTube video of you. And anybody listening may not understand this. Think of this. Gary Michael Cappetta doing ring announcing for WWE, and Vince McMahon doing color commentary. And it was the footage, I'm not sure you remember, it's where Snuka was the heel. It was Jimmy Snuka, and I'm trying to remember who else. I can't remember who else it was. No, it was Jimmy Snuka was a heel, and you did commentary, and it was, late, I think it was 1978, and, it was old, the old school wrestling, and the fair was and everything all bright, and fireworks and pyrotechnics. It just was an old school feel. Talk to us about memories of WWF in the late 70s, and your memories of working for Vince Sr. and eventually Vince Jr.
Yeah, well, that's where I got an education. I had very little contact with Junior. You're right. He did the commentary, and I was the ring announcer, but he pretty much didn't really want to talk to me. I don't know why, but he was just very distant. My contact with the WWF was Gorilla Monsoon. He was the person that brought me in. He was a part owner of the promotion, and he treated me very, very well. I always had incredible respect for Monsoon. So, and I was learning, along the way, and I was kept away from the wrestlers before the show. I had no idea, what went on in the locker rooms because I wasn't allowed in there until I started doing the TVs, which was 2 years after I started announcing. They were exciting times. Every month I was at the Philadelphia Spectrum, so that was exciting. And when I started, Bruno Sammartino was the champ. And when I announced for them, it was we went through quite a, Sammartino held the belt for a long, long time, but then in rapid succession, it was, Billy Graham and then Pedro Morales and Ivan Koloff and Stan Stasiak and, Iron Sheik, and then we got to Hulk Hogan. So, and that's about when I left. So it was a very exciting time, and those were my formative years, and that's where I learned so much just by doing it, and by everything that you do in the ring should be logical, all of your reactions and so forth, and whether you're a wrestler or a referee or the announcer, you never. One of the keys is that you should never forget how you viewed the matches when you were sitting in the third row, when you were a fan. If you can remember what you witnessed and how you reacted, then that's a key to what you should be doing in the ring.
Wow. That's good advice. That is good advice.
Yeah, you never lose that perspective.
Did you have a different mindset for us announcing the faces, as they call it now, and when you announced the heels, so the good guys and the bad guys? And were there any specific demands or orders from the boys to you when it came to announcing them?
No. That's just whether you were the first guy in the first match or you were the main event. I like to think that I treated you the same. I gave you the same introduction. There's more emotion when you get to the featured matches. People are more riled up, and that does affect your announcing. But I never underplayed any of the wrestlers, no matter what their position was on the card. It was logic. It was logical, and I had watched wrestling for a long time, so you would just know. You would just know. It was back then. There was no music entrances. The wrestlers would come to the ring. They would both get in the ring, and then you'd introduce them. It was very different the way that it was done back then. It was more of a serious sports contest with less of the glitz and less of the all of the
showmanship.
Yeah. And nobody got on the microphone. You did all of your communicating through your wrestling and through your interaction with the fans. That's the art. That's the art form, the art of the game. I mean, anybody can get on the microphone and create a scenario with words. That's storytelling. Your storytelling should be done through your mat work. What you do in the ring, and how you do it, how you carry yourself, what your facial expressions are. You're communicating not only with people that are 10 feet away from you in the first row, but you're communicating with people that are up in the balcony. So all of your actions have to be broad, so that because you're not on camera. So it was very different. And back then, of course, they didn't have the giant screen that they might have at a larger arena now, where it's like watching it at home on television. You had to communicate person to person, but from a long distance. Everything you do should be logical. You should always keep the perspective of how the fan sees things. And if you're a true artist, less mic work, more mat work.
That's a good point. I like that saying. You like that saying. Who was your favorites to be around the late 70s, early 80s of the then WWF? I know you was around Billy Graham and Mark Simo, Bruno and Pedro and Bob Backlund. Who were some of your favorites, and if dare to say your least favorites?
Well, at the time, I didn't. Announcing was not my full-time gig. I was a teacher, so I didn't spend a whole lot of time around the wrestlers, other than at the events, other than seeing everybody before the show in the locker room, doing my introductions. But then I went straight home because I was in the classroom the next morning. So
wow.
I didn't have a whole lot of interaction. The Grand Wizard, one of the managers, he was very helpful. Tony Garea gave me an education on how to buy a house. He was Tony Garea was a very intelligent guy. He would purchase rundown homes, and he would renovate them, and then he would sell them for really good profit. And so he educated me about how homes. And in Monsoon, he was I don't know, he was like my big brother. He was really the person that I depended upon. He protected me, and I'm not even sure why. I mean, I don't know. I wish that he was still with us. I would love to sit down and talk to him still, with the perspective that I have now. But so I really didn't fraternize with a lot of the guys back when I was with the WWF because I was in school.
You say you was a teacher. What did you teach?
I taught Spanish. I took an early retirement a couple of years ago. I chaired the department, the World Language Department, at a school in New Jersey. It was a private Christian Brothers Academy in central New Jersey.
Wow. Definitely love to get to find out new things about wrestling legends, being a teacher of Spanish. After your time in WWE, and I believe doing our research, I believe you said before that you worked for the WWE, the NWA, and the AWA at the same time. Is that correct?
All at the same time. That is correct.
Wow.
Because
how did you manage to do that?
I'm not even sure how I got away with it. It was during the time when I knew that my days with the WWF were numbered. Monsoon was no longer a co-owner, so my future was really in the hands of the McMahons, and I knew that they would not bring me on board for the long haul. And Jimmy Crockett and Vern Gagne had gotten together, and they formed Pro Wrestling USA. After McMahon had gone across the country, they decided they would team up and they would come into the Northeast to present shows. And I was still announcing for the WWF, and I was asked to announce for their Pro Wrestling USA shows. So that was a combination AWA, NWA. And I did it, to tell you the truth, I did it for a couple of months, mostly at the Meadowlands Arena. And after the second month so I was there every other week, once for one promotion, then for the second promotion, then for the first promotion, then for the second promotion. And I thought that, I really don't think this is a good move for me, because I thought that I would lose credibility if I would come into the ring and say this is the greatest wrestling in the world for the WWF 1 week, and then 2 weeks later say the same thing for the AWA and the NWA. So I made a choice, and I stopped announcing for the WWF, and I just did all my announcing work for Vern Gagne and Jim Crockett. So that's how that happened. I was amazed that after I announced for the Pro Wrestling USA show that McMahon didn't fire me. I was expecting a call, to get fired, but it never happened.
Just kept you on in. If you can, talk about the differences of McMahon and then Gagne and Crockett. If you had any interaction with them, and also the mindset of working for the different companies, from leaving WWE and now working for the AWA and the Crackers and NWA. There wasn't. I really didn't have too much interaction with the owners of the companies. I truly didn't. It was I would get there. They would tell me what they needed. I would do it. It was like always like a business kind of relationship. The McMahons would never tell you that you did a good job. They would always. I think that they thought that if they gave you a pat on the back and they told you did a good job, that you'd get too comfortable, and they never wanted you to feel secure. By the time I started working for the NWA and the AWA, I was secure with what I was doing, and I kind of figured after 11 years with the McMahons that I had developed a certain status. Confidence.
Yeah, confidence, and also the way they looked at me was different because because of my experience with the WWF. So, but I really was ignored by the McMahons, and I was treated professionally by Vern Gagne and Jim Crockett. That's in a nutshell, I would say that should.
Thank you. Now, if you didn't have a lot of interaction with the boys in WWE for, you said, about 2 years, how much interaction did you have with the boys in the AWA and in your time with Crockett?
Just as little. It wasn't until I started with WCW because I stopped teaching. I signed a full-time contract with Turner Broadcasting, and I left teaching behind, and I went on the road full-time. So at that point, I had more contact with wrestlers outside of the ring. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Well, I'm going to bring in one of my correspondents, Toph, from Atlanta, Georgia. Toph, go, brother. You live with Gary Michael Cappetta.
Hey, Mr. Cappetta, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Where are you?
Right now I'm in my home of Augusta, but I frequent Atlanta sometimes. I used to see you back in the day when I was younger.
I was younger too, you know.
Oh, well, I hear you're immortal, so I'm told.
I'm just pulling your leg. So what's going on tonight? What's on your mind?
I got some questions. Tech went through most of them. I think this one's probably more of an obvious question, but I'll ask anyway. So when you are an announcer and you're announcing the different names, one thing that I've noticed before, I don't really see people do it anymore. Like back then, you would say from wherever they were from, and then how many pounds they weighed, and then you would say their name. Like, my personal favorite, from Death Valley, weighing, Undertaker was like 299 pounds for like 20 years straight. We all know he wasn't 299. Announcers don't do that anymore. They just say from what city and then their name. How do you feel about that? Because some people feel like by announcing the weight and the name, it comes off as more of a legit sport. But I read that for time-constraining reasons, they just kind of stopped doing that. So do you have an opinion, or have you even noticed?
Yeah, I have an opinion, and I think you are exactly right. The time restraint reason, that's a bunch of rubbish. I mean, what are we talking about? 2 seconds? That's bullshit. But you're right. Years ago, pro wrestling was presented as a legitimate contest, and today it's not. And that's the big difference. We also, would announce time limits. Every match had a time limit: 15-minute time limit, 20-minute time limit, 1-hour time limit. I don't think that happens anymore. Am I correct?
They may do it in Ring of Honor, but I certainly don't hear it in WWE or TNA.
Yeah, they don't still do WWE. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's missing too. The other thing is, even when and I go out and I do guest ring announcing, and even with music entrances, when there's a championship match, if you want to present it as a championship match, that this is serious, then the way to do it is each of the challenger comes in first with his music, no introduction. The champion comes in second with his music, no introduction. When both guys are in the ring, no music, nothing fancy, then the introductions start. And that adds a level of importance and seriousness to the match. I don't think that happens anymore, generally either. When I go to, and I'm going back to Memphis Saturday to announce for NWA Mid-South, that's how I've done it there, where I'll introduce an NWA Heavyweight Championship match, but I don't make the introductions until everybody's in the ring and the music is stopped. And that adds seriousness to it. So, that's the difference. And it lends seriousness to what's going on. It was just presented differently then than it is now. And it's just different. And I'm never going to say better. It's just different. It's just a different presentation of the product. You mentioned Ring of Honor, and I worked with Ring of Honor doing the backstage interviews. And at the time, and I have not seen Ring of Honor recently, but at the time it was a great mix of the two, where you could have the showmanship that's more WWE-ish, but yet the seriousness of old school. And I thought they did a great job. This was back in 2005, 2006, 2007 when I worked with them. CM Punk was there, Colt Cabana, AJ Styles. They just had a Samoa Joe. They had a great low key. They had a great roster. Brian Danielson was there, and I thought they did it just right for today.
Okay. Thanks for that. My next question is, this one's actually kind of funny. It's not really. This is more of a question, which turns into a funny story. I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of fans, and people are probably going to laugh when I say this, a lot of fans actually learned about the geography of Earth from just watching wrestling, because when you hear the same people getting announced over and over, you recognize cities like, where Jericho's from, where people from the UK are from, stuff like that. So my next question is, when you're announcing, do you memorize where they're from, or is it kind of like when you announce long enough, you just kind of learn? I don't know if my question makes sense.
Yeah. When you introduce the same people night after night after night, you obviously you remember them. But I always had all of that information in my hand. I always had it written out, even though I rarely looked at it. It was just I guess an insecurity that I had, that I just wanted to be sure that in case I had, my mind went blank, I could look down at the paper and it would be there. Yeah, but it just depends on how often you introduce the same people. Now, at the time, the WWF roster and the NWA roster, it didn't change that much. So if you are a recurring announcer, and when I was with the WWF, I was announcing 2-3 times a week. And then when I was with WCW, I was announcing, I was on the road in 21 days a month. So every night, the same guys. Yeah, you just remember, everything. The weights I pretty much made up. So that was just, I just decided that's
okay.
what he looked like.
That's okay. I used to make up weights too.
No one ever complained, so I guess I kind of got it right. There was one time when I even made up where someone was from. We were, remember Trucker Norm?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember that guy? He had other names at different times in his career. So we're at a production meeting, and Dusty Rhodes is the booker, and he says, okay, so we have this, introducing this new character for this TV, and his name is Trucker Norm. So I say, where is Trucker Norm from? And he says, just make up something. So I thought about it, and I came up with from the highways and byways of America, because I figured he's always on the road because he's a trucker. Right.
So that was one time when I actually made it up, and I'm not sure where with Sid Vicious, from Anywhere He Damn Well Pleases. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, one of my favorites. Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Or his fans that hit me up asking, they wanted to know, Mr. Gary Michael Cappetta loved you as a fan. This is from John from Indiana. He actually just asked us, where is From Wherever He Damn Well Pleases, Chief of Consequences, New Mexico, in Death Valley, in parts unknown?
I didn't catch that question, but this is John from Indiana?
Yes. Yeah,
Did you
message me.
Tell John from Indiana. I didn't understand the question, but tell John from Indiana that I'm coming to Indiana with my stage show to Indianapolis, and I hope he'll be there.
Oh, wow. Okay, I definitely have message him back.
We're going to be at the Irving Theater.
He was mentioning how he just out of funny question, like Toph mentioned, how you had Chief of Consequences in Mexico, From Wherever He Damn Well Pleases, Death Valley, parts unknown. He was joking around asking you if you knew where they were on the map.
Oh, if I knew where they were on the map? Well,
Yeah.
Truth or Consequences, New Mexico is a real place.
Yeah,
Yes,
it is. My personal favorite was what was that dude? I'm sorry, Dustin Reynolds. When he was in TNA, what character did he go by? Tech? Was he Black Rain or something like that?
Black Rain, one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, like Black Rain. I remember someone said from the deepest corner of his mind. That's crazy.
So tell John that I'll see him in Indianapolis. I think it's March 4th at the Irving Theater.
All right, I have one more question. This is a fan question someone actually had sent me. This is from a friend of mine from PWP Nation. This is from Tom from Chicago.
Wait. I have a question. What does TWD Nation mean?
Oh, PWP. PWP is from Pro Wrestling Powerhouse. Some mutual friends of ours. Is that like a news? Is that like a news site or? Yeah. Indirect plug, I guess. Pro Wrestling Powerhouse, also known as PWP Nation. The owner is in New Jersey.
And what is his name? What is the guy from Chicago's name?
His name is Tom.
Well, tell Tom. I have a message for Tom too.
Okay.
That the day after Indianapolis, I'll be in Chicago with my show.
Oh,
so I'll
that
see
works out then.
Yep, I'll see him at stage 773 on March 5th. I think it's a Sunday. It's a Sunday afternoon. I'm sorry. So what's the question?
The question is, because of the success of the WWE Network, there's a show called Breaking Ground where we're showing people, and the struggles they go through to become pro wrestlers, sports entertainers, the developmental center down south. And his question is, would you like to see a show that shows what it takes to become an announcer in pro wrestling? I'm not sure if you keep up with the WWE product, but there's currently an announcer called JoJo. And at first, she tried to become an in-ring performer. That didn't really work out. And then she just kind of quietly became an announcer and seems to be working out rather well for her. But they never really showed what she went through, So I guess the question is, would you be interested or do you think there should be a show that should show how you become an announcer, because you don't really see stuff like that?
Well, it sounds like it would be boring to me. I don't think you go through too much to become an announcer, to tell you the truth.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Like, what is there to see? What is there? You're going to watch somebody like spray their tonsils or something? Like, what is the point?
Well, I think there's an art to it. What's that dude's name, Tech? The one that was announcing for a while in WWE and he left. The one that Daniel Bryan choked out.
Oh, you mean Justin Roberts?
Yeah, Justin Roberts. I liked him. The one thing about him that I noticed, I give him credit for, is depending on who he was announcing, he tried to change the tone of his voice, almost like to an accent. But, God bless him. Every time John Cena came out, he tried so hard to make the name John sound special when you can't. John's like the most basic name ever. Like, you can make Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin or The Rock. Like, you can make that sound badass, but I'm sorry. When I hear the word John, I think about John Smith from Pocahontas. It's just not working. So I got off topic. My bad.
When it comes to an announcer, I could sit someone down and I could, in a half hour, I could give them all of the information that they need, all of the tips. But it takes going out and doing it to get comfortable first, and then finally to develop your own style and to get good at doing it. So it's nothing that you're going to be able to achieve or accomplish or perfect in front of a mirror. You just have to get in the middle of a ring in front of fans and do it. So I really don't see that there's a show there, to tell you the truth.
Okay, those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thanks. So you can stay on. You can stay on live if you want. Gary, with that, one of the most asked questions from fans, I'm pretty sure you've been asked this before we Give a shout out to our good friend Jim Ross. We know you did Jim Ross show about 8-9 months ago, former guest of our show, in Cabana. One of the most infamous intros is "This Is Sting." The intro that you started, everybody makes you synonymous with. Can you tell us, how did you come up with that? Is that something you just started off with? Is that something you talked to Sting about? Or is it something that just caught on? So, Gary Michael Cappetta, you there? Fans, we do apologize. Fans, we apologize. His call did drop, so we'll have him come back on in a second. Topher, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. There's some connection issues out right now. There's like
yes, it is.
There's like a storm system towards the Midwest to the southeastern region of the country right now, and it's just causing some connection, radio, Wi-Fi issues. So, we apologize to fans.
Yes, in lieu to technical difficulties, why our show started 5 minutes late due to the storm in the area, being in Baltimore, you being in Georgia, with Gary being in New Jersey. Can't believe we have Gary back. Gary, you there?
Yep, I'm back. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Do you want me to answer that question about Sting?
Yes.
There was a reason for that, for me to say this is Sting. Sting is, if you were to just announce Sting on its own, you're not going to be able to project that. You're not going to be able to boom that out because it's a closed vowel, ing, as opposed to Hogan or Flair or Steamboat. Like, it's one syllable with one vowel that's a closed vowel. So I needed to, I guess the way that I put it is, you need like a running start to get there, and so I needed to say something before his name. So I just created "This Is," and so by the time I got to Sting, I was able to boom it. So in other words, I made it a 3-syllable name. This is Sting, and that was the reason for it.
That's
and then I would
smart.
I would always hope for the best, because you never knew whether it was, whether it was going to be there or not when you got there. But because I'm old school, I boom my announcements. I don't, and it's not the smartest thing because it really does a number on your voice. When I did the voice for the video game,
Showtime, Legends of Wrestling.
Yeah, it was Legends of Wrestling Showdown.
Showdown, yes.
I was in the studio all day with announcement after announcement after announcement, and after the first day, we were doing it I did it 2 different weekends. But on one weekend, we did it 2 days, Saturday and a Sunday. And at the end of the first day, I didn't have a voice. Like what I was telling you about when I did the event center, and they wanted me to do it with my ring announce voice. Your voice isn't made to take that kind of punishment for 8 hours consecutively. It's fine for introducing 8 matches. You're not saying all that much, and you have because I'm old school and because I boom, I just really project. Sting, that could be a killer. So this is Sting, and let it out that way. So that was the reason that I made it up. And it's interesting that I understand that they played that during his induction into the WWE Hall of Fame. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, what are your thoughts of how WWE used Sting? Of course, he was with somebody we'll call the proverbial unicorn. The wrestler, the legend that Sting never was, the wrestler that Vince never was able to get. He finally got Sting. Sting finally, wrestled for WWE. What are your thoughts of how he was used if you still watch the product?
To tell you the truth, I wasn't watching at the time, so I have no idea how they used him. I've been watching a little bit more recently, And I tell you the truth, what has really caught my eye in the current WWE product are the women wrestlers. I think they're doing a terrific job. I mean, of wrestling. I'm talking about wrestling. I'm very impressed with with what they're doing, and a lot of the the male wrestlers too. But I'm just seeing that the wrestling has gotten a lot better in the WWE. I just wish they would talk less. I did tune in a little bit tonight to SmackDown, and it was just kind of stupid. It was AJ Styles and James, whoever, the new guy.
Ellsworth, he's local too. Yes.
And then whoever AJ Styles is going to wrestle for the title in
Ambrose.
It was just like too much talk, and it really wasn't interesting. So I mean, if they wanted AJ to attack him, they could have done it, in 3 minutes. They didn't have to spend 20 minutes to do it. But I'm not dumping on the product, because I tell you the truth, it's gotten, there's a lot of terrific talent on there, and I don't watch like 3 hours of Raw, but I'll like dip in and out, and what I've seen is impressive. Have you
got sleep? Talk about the times where you battled. Were there ever a time where you've been a part of a bad show, a Crockett, for Vince, for Vern, for later in WCW or Bischoff, where the show was just bad? Jim Ross told us before where he, the infamous story where he announced shows within tour, and it was just so bad. It was like, let's just get the hell out of here. Have you been a part of bad shows where you was like, can we finish now? Or like they drag like 3 hours of Raw. Like, can we go home? Give us some stories of that.
I'd say the Super Clash pay-per-view that I did for the AWA in Chicago. It was Jerry Lawler and Kerry Von Erich on top. That was pretty bad. It had a women's lingerie match, if I remember correctly. It was that wasn't good, but that's really an exception. Just to pick one. That's the one that stands out in my mind as just not being good. There usually was. What
made, and we know the Super Clash with the T Promotions working together, trying to do what do you call, like a merger show. In your opinion, you being there, why was it such a bad show? Was it the egos of the promoters and the boys trying to see who would go on top? Was the show this bad? Were you just not feeling it?
It was probably an ill-conceived show. There just wasn't. There were representatives from different, I believe, if I remember correctly, there were representatives from different promotions there.
Yes.
And it just didn't gel. Kerry Von Erich was on another planet that night. So that didn't help. That was the night that he cut himself before he went out to the ring. He cut himself under his armpit, and he was bleeding. He really was on another planet that night. I was getting changed in the locker room, and Kerry came in, and he sat across from me, and we were sitting in your standard metal folding chairs. And so he's lacing up his boots. He laces up his boots, and he, I guess, wanted to go over to the sink. So he stands up, and he just falls on his face. Now, this is the guy that's the main event that night. And what he had done was he tied his laces around the leg of the chair. So he tripped himself. When he stood up, it was just a bad scene. that really stands out in my mind.
If you don't mind, Mr. Cappetta, just to go over real quick, Super Clash T, for fans that don't know, was at the Cow Palace. Are you talking about the Super Clash 2 that was in San Francisco, or was you talking about Super Clash 3? Just checking. A fan just literally sent me this.
It was the one in Chicago.
Super Clash
was in
3,
Chicago.
okay. Yeah, this is it. December 13th, 1988, Chicago.
That would be it. It was Jerry Lawler and Kerry Von Erich on top. Ladies lingerie match.
Yeah, you also had Wahoo McDaniel defeated Manny Fernandez, Indian strap match. Rock and Roll Express fought the Stud Stable. Like you said, the women's lingerie match, of course. DDP was in this card, too. Iceman King Parsons versus Buckhouse Brown. But you've been around a lot. Another question, see, before we get to your book, because we definitely will cover your book, is Michael Buffer. We're getting questions about this. We know you, me and Toph, my staff, you were the voice of WCW, of the NWA. You know, hearing the world, seeing the old Worldwide and WCW Saturday Night intros, we first think of your voice. And then the Monday Night Wars come, and NWO and all of that. And instead of hearing your voice, Gary, we hear Michael Buffer's. And granted, he was a legend in the world of boxing. We didn't get to hear your voice at all at the pay-per-views, Sting, Hogan, Flair, Savage. How did that make you feel, honestly? Did you care at all, or did you feel kind of like a rub? Did you disrespected when he brought in Michael Buffer?
Are you talking about like when I would do the pay-per-views and he would do the main event, or are you talking about when Nitro started?
Both.
Or does it matter?
Yes, both.
Well, when I was working full-time with them, and it was an Eric Bischoff thing, and no, it didn't matter. It didn't change anything that I did other than I announced one less match. It was what Eric thought would sell better to the audience. And then my contract had expired before Nitro started, so I wasn't even working with them when that TV show began. I had left in May, and that show began in September. So I had nothing to. David Penzer was the ring announcer after I finished. So it had nothing to do with me.
Another former guest of our show. Your thoughts of Dave Penzer?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Your thoughts of Dave Penzer? We had him on the show before as well. Your thoughts of Dave Penzer? Were you a fan of his work?
I didn't catch what you said, but if it's about David Penzer, he's really good. He's a really good guy. He had a difficult time when he continued announcing after I left, because anyone would have. Eric Bischoff didn't appreciate the role of the announcer. So as soon as he took over, he diminished the role of a ring announcer. And I think what he was doing was copying what Vince was doing. And so at a certain point, the home viewer didn't hear the introductions after Eric took over, and the commentators would talk over the introductions. So that happened toward the end of my my work with WCW, and then David inherited that. So I think it just had to do with Eric not appreciating the role of an announcer, a ring announcer.
Thank you for that. Besides that, with Bischoff not being a fan of the ring announcer, were you a fan at all of Bischoff in general?
No, he was no, and no, he was. I think he was just in over his head. the show had terrific success, but he had a huge bankroll to spend of TBS's money. So, that was a great advantage that he had. But no, he had started certain things that were a detriment to the booking of a promotion, such as giving people creative control over their own destiny. And that's never a good thing, because you're always going to want to put yourself over. And not everybody can be put over. If you're going to have a conflict between two characters, somebody's going to go down. I just think that he didn't have an appreciation of the basic ingredients, which will never change, as to what makes a pro wrestling match successful. You can do things that are very short term that will rile people up, but that if they're not done properly, you have no place to go from there. So you just have to keep on doing something a little bit more outrageous and a little bit more outrageous and a little bit more outrageous until after a while it's outrage for no reason. I honestly didn't follow the Nitro product either. After I left WCW, I didn't watch it. So I can't be specific, but I know from the time that I knew him, that I worked with him, that he, it was like going back to my beginnings, where there was no appreciation from the McMahons. There was really no appreciation from Bischoff as to what I did and what my role was and how it could be used to enhance the product. So if he doesn't understand that, then I really have no standing. There's nothing I can do, no matter how good you are at what you do, unless you're, a Hollywood celebrity like Buffer. So that's why he was attracted to him. And Michael probably had, if I'm not mistaken, I think Michael's agent was the agent, maybe of Hogan's at one time, or so, there was that connection also, which was also beyond my control. So it didn't matter what I did if that's how Eric thought, and then that's how he thought, and that's the direction he was going to go. And he was the boss, so he had every right to make the decisions that he did. But I didn't find him to be honorable. He didn't live up to certain things that he had promised. So that was my experience.
Okay, thank you for that. What we're going to do, Gary, is I'm going to have my media assistant ask you one more question about the time before Bischoff, and then we're going to get into talking about your book, and then what you think that we wasn't going to cover it, because we will talk about your book that we definitely are excited to get very seen and read. I'm going to bring in my, of course, our media assistant, Saltine. Welcome live with Gary Michael Cappetta.
Hello, Mr. Cappetta. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. Where are you calling from?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
All right. All right. My question for you is, during the time of WCW, the early stage of WCW, I was wondering what was it like to work with Bill Watts. I know he was an hard ass. He was an asshole to many of the wrestlers and many of the staff there. So can you tell me a time if you had a problem or you witnessed his antics backstage?
Well, I had a very different experience with Bill Watts from what you just described. I had absolutely no problem with him. The key to Bill Watts is that he knows what he wants. He's very clear as to what he wants. He'll tell you what he wants. And if you give him what he wants, you'll have no problem with him. So I had absolutely no problem with Bill Watts. Now, I'll tell you a story that goes contrary to, and I know where you got that caricature, but I just think that there are people who either when they don't get their way, and usually the bad news is delivered by the booker, then all of a sudden the booker becomes demonized, or people believe that once they have a position in a promotion, that it's for life, and no one ever promised anyone a lifetime position. So there is going to be a time when your tenure with the promotion is going to end. So you just need to accept that. You need to understand that going in, that that's going to happen someday. Bill Watts, when Bill Watts took over, I had negotiated my contract and with his predecessor, but it had never been signed, and it was a pretty generous deal. And so I said to Bill, I'm working without a contract, and we need to sign the contract. So I got the contract, I read it through, and it was not correct in different places. And all of the places that it wasn't correct was to my detriment. So I said to him, we need to meet on about this. He said, well, come on to my office. We went into his office, and I said, look, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And he was very trusting. He just said, fine. He just changed it, initialed it. There was another time, it happened to be in Baltimore, and it was on the night of when Ron Simmons won the title. And it had to do with the lottery to pick Vader's opponent, who turned out to be Simmons. And he was going to go on television. This was very early in his tenure. And he was going to tell everybody that the main event, Sting versus Vader, was not going to happen. So he laid it all out to us in the back. And afterwards, I went up to him, and I said, Bill, I have another idea about that. He said, why? What do you think? So I said to him, this is one of your first public announcements, your first public appearances on WCW television, and you're the executive vice president. When you get in the ring, in the middle of the ring in Baltimore, and you tell the people that the main event that they thought they were going to see is not going to happen, they're going to boo you. They're going to boo you out of this arena. I said, do you really want the people at home, worldwide, to see you being booed? I said, then every time you appear, that's what they're going to know. That's what they're going to remember. I have a relationship with the people, the fans in Baltimore. And why don't I get in and tell the people that the match isn't going to happen? And they'll boo me, but who cares? I'm the ring announcer. It doesn't matter that they boo me, but it would matter if they boo you, because every time you appear, the people are going to boo. And he just thought about that, and he said, yeah, I think you're right. So now there's an example of where he had his mindset on a certain direction, and with reason, I presented him an alternative, and he went with it. So I found him to be very reasonable.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And after we talk about your book, Gary, we'll see your thoughts on Jim Herd. We got a couple of Twitter questions before we end this segment. Your book, Body Slams, Memoirs of a Wrestling Pitchman. We love the name. What made you decide to write a book? Writing a book it's like podcasting. We've been doing professional radio for 4 years, so we did radio, wrestling, and pop culture before. Now it's like everybody has a podcast and a radio show now. We're writing a book, Mick Foley and The Rock and Jericho, and a lot of wrestlers start writing books, and everybody start following suit. And you're in, Gary, you're a ring announcer, you're a pitch man. Love the idea of you writing a book. What about your book makes it unique and makes it different for us, the readers, to get a different experience as opposed to a wrestler and a referee?
Well, it's from a totally different perspective. I always have kept one foot in the real world. And I think it's while there are sensational stories in it. Remember, I was the guy that was flipped Mick Foley's ear in Germany, and was in the middle of the Arn Sid knife fight in England. So I was. There are some interesting stories, but I have a more like sober, analytical view of the craziness that I was surrounded by. I didn't intend to write the book when I left WCW. It was difficult to make the transition from being on the road 21 days a month over the last those last 6 years to being sedentary at home. So I just started to just write some thoughts, and it turned into the book. And for 2 years I sat home and I wrote. I didn't do any other work at the time when I was doing it. Now, years later, I'm taking the book and I'm bringing it to life in a stage show through storytelling and video. Some of the video has never been seen before. It's behind-the-scenes video that's just camcorder taken back in the day, and so I created a stage show. It's a 90-minute show, and got props. I've got stories to tell of their costumes. Their
wow.
It's it's a stage show. It's not a Q&A. A lot of the guys go out and and they'll do the question and answer sessions. This is different. We'll probably do a question and answer at the end of the show, just depending upon how much time we have and how long we have the theater for. But I'm going to be taking it to Philadelphia, Scranton, Worcester, Massachusetts, Indianapolis, Chicago, Greensboro, Orlando, and I hope I'm still working on finding homes for it in Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But the other than Pittsburgh and Baltimore, everything is set. Tickets are already on sale. In Chicago and in Greensboro, the tickets are being sold exclusively by the venue. So it's the Pearl Theater in Greensboro, and it's stage 773 in Chicago. But the tickets for Philly, Scranton, Worcester, and Indianapolis, and hopefully Pittsburgh and Baltimore, are on Eventbrite.com. So tickets are already on sale on those on Eventbrite. So if people go, in fact, they were just put up this week, and they're discounted for the first week that they're on sale. They'll be discounted through the first week of December, just to encourage people to buy early, because these shows are in February and March.
Well, what we'll do, of course, me and you, Gary, we talk off air, is I'll be sending you we'll be collaborating off air after the show. I'll come in to where we can work on getting you a venue here in Baltimore, so you can have your show here, because we do owe you that, with you being synonymous with wrestling and being synonymous with the great city that is here.
Yeah, it would be a shame if Baltimore wasn't included on this tour. I'm talking to one theater, and if that doesn't work out, then I probably don't have any alternatives right now. So I'm hoping that it will work out. I'm just waiting to hear back from them as far as their availability on the dates that I have free from the tour. And all the tour dates are weekends, so I'll be going out on weekends to do it's Philly, Scranton, Worcester, Indianapolis. Those are on sale now at Eventbrite. And then Chicago at stage 773, and Greensboro at the Pearl Theater. Those are bought through the venues, through those at the theaters. And most of the places they're small theaters. We're not talking big here. We're talking 100-seat, 100-seat theaters. And it'll be fun. And that's why I'm doing it, because I just think this is going to be a lot of fun.
It sounds fun to us. You sold it to us. I mean, we already buyers. Something different, like you said. We had the chance to